Welcome everyone to Already Cancelled. I am Peter, that is Connor, and we are going to talk about Star Trek The Next Generation, Season 6, Episode 6. It is called True Q. So full spoilers for the episode as always. This episode's about a young woman who's there to intern, effectively, on the Enterprise. Yeah. And very quickly though, we find out as an audience that she has superpowers and is doing various things, some by accident, some not by accident, and then all of a sudden Q shows up, and the premise of the episode is really that this woman is actually the child of other Q and is a Q in terms of race. So Q's there to assess that and then decide what to do with her, and we get a bit more detail of that as the episode goes on. But that is the thing. It's not really a twist per se, because it's very early on. You see these powers kind of manifest, but it's an interesting premise for sure.
Yeah, it becomes essentially a retelling of a lot of Greek myths of, do they choose to be the demigods, the children of gods, do they choose to be gods or mortals? A lot of them get offered that choice at various points, and this is essentially a retelling of that story.
Yeah, it's interesting to see a Q who's not a dick, which is part of the charm.
We have heard of such things, but
yeah. Because I mean, Q in many ways, we've said this before, especially I think when we started this show and we came from the original series. The original series had so many godlike beings that Next Gen has by and large stayed away from it, but the one big example is the recurring Q, and they've made like a proper character out of him, and he's this constant idea that is returned to time and time again. And kind of sees himself as a friend of Picard, and that's something that's still being played with all the way through to season 2 of Picard, in present day. But yeah, I mostly enjoyed this episode. I wouldn't say that every single idea is completely knocked out of the park, but I generally enjoyed Q's interactions with everyone, including the character of Amanda, who's the young woman. I enjoyed her flirtations with Riker, which is kind of a running thing in the episode as well. Those were kind of amusing. The sort of the moral question of what she should do. Does she have a choice? Does she not have a choice? And then ultimately this idea, well, she wants to be human because she wants to have all these relationships she thinks she wants, but she's not allowed to use her powers if she makes that choice. So that kind of becomes this big thing at the end where, well, no, she can't help but intervene when someone's in trouble, or in this case, a whole planet's in trouble. So, yes. It's just this idea she chooses this path, but you get the impression she's probably going to be a much more nicer and helpful god than Q is, as far as being
a benevolent
concerned.
god.
A benevolent god, yes. I mean, not that they're gods per se, but for godlike being, is the
relatively speaking.
Yeah, so I mean that's the gist of the episode. How do you feel about it?
Yeah, I agree. I don't think it's like a standout. I don't think it has good ideas and it presents them well enough, and it's mostly fun. It's just not a standout. It doesn't go above and beyond at any point, I don't think.
Yeah, it's kind of like it almost verges into some territory where Picard does make a bit of a speech, and I actually love that Q sort of goes, "I love when you make a speech, Picard." It's like, oh yeah, that's great.
I think he says, he's like, I know I always come here for your speeches, but not this time. I'm like, yeah, that's kind of it's a very meta commentary about the episode itself.
Yeah.
It knows that a lot of the time as an audience we're here for the Picard speech.
Yeah,
but
and
that's not what this episode's about.
And his speech is fine. His speech is solid Picard speech giving. The point of it's perfectly solid. It's just, it is a bit more lighthearted at times, and there is potentially a darker story here of someone starting to get used to these godlike powers that she's using, and she does do a few things in the middle of the episode where she's starting to maybe abuse them a little bit, and I thought it was going to go down not necessarily to have a dark ending, but it would go down maybe a harder path before she sort of made some realizations by the end. And it didn't quite do that. It more quickly became, okay, the truth about some of her past comes out from Q and the investigation that leads us down a different path. And then it kind of almost, I won't say forgets, but just kind of drops the idea that she might be abusing her powers.
Yeah, it does it in a narrative way, in the sense that she kind of comes to her senses. But there is no big fulfilling, dramatic moment that causes that realization. Not really.
Yeah, she kind of she's sitting there with Crusher and Troy. They're having dinner, and Riker comes past. She invites him to sit down with them. He's like, "Sorry, I'd love to, but I've got plans." And he sits down right across from him with a woman, and she gets jealous. And there's been these little moments throughout the episode where she'll say thank you to Riker or compliment him, and he sort of like gets what she's doing and smiles and is nice about it, but walks off. And keep in mind, this is meant to be an intern who's like college aged, and Riker's
I took it to be like placement, sort of thing, like I don't know, like nurses do. You get final year, you do placement in a hospital.
Yeah, this is before she goes to Starfleet Academy. This is like this is post like regular education, but before Starfleet Academy. So whatever age that I'm assuming she's like 1920s, kind of the idea.
Yeah, I think 18, 19. Yeah.
So Riker's like, yeah, you're a perfectly fine young woman, but I'm not a creep. Like, I'm a ladies' man, but I'm not a creep. So,
Riker has lines.
Yes. So she just snaps her fingers, and like they both teleport to like a gazebo in a nice romantic location, and she's even dressed them up in like an outfit that she likes, some old school outfit. And immediately he's like, look, this isn't real. Take us back to 10 forward. You can't just get what you want, because that's the thing. Q is over her shoulder for like a lot of this episode, being like, you're a Q, the world's your playground, you can do whatever you want.
He's such a bad influence.
He's terrible. It's funny, but he's terrible. And this is kind of the lesson she learns here, is that because he says you can't just like make someone love you, and she's like, can't I? And she snaps her fingers again, and not literally necessarily, but like I'm just I'm emphasizing. And he immediately goes, yes, I love you dearly. He starts kissing the back of her neck, and she's basically manipulated his feelings. But then, of course, she very quickly says, this isn't real. Like, I've made you do this, so it's not fulfilling. Like, I'm not, you don't really feel these things for me. And that's obviously the realization she should come to. But I thought there was going to be a bit more to it than just this quick scene, effectively, to get to that point. Maybe more of a lesson she'd have to learn through being selfish and doing things that she wants. Because there's I think it's right before this scene when she's sort of been more tempted, when Q's like, let's play hide and seek, and he like basically disguises himself as like different objects like around the Enterprise, or he hides inside of at one point she teleports into the engine room, and Geordi and Data are Geordi's freaked out, Data's just amused because he's Data. That she's just teleported there on her own without transporter tech, and then like Q sticks his head out of the engine. He's like, hey, you're thinking like a human. And then like they go outside the ship, they're standing on the exterior of the ship because they're Q, they don't need to breathe. And
I do think this is one of two moments in the episode that stand out where it is treated with like this reverence, because this is from her perspective, where for Q this is nothing, but for her this is this breathtaking realization of, oh, this is what I can do now.
Yeah, because he tells her.
I think the moment does play like that.
Yeah, because he tells her you don't need to eat, you don't have to do these other things. But yeah, this is a moment where she's standing in space. Like, these rules do not apply to her the same way that they do humans. And that's kind of interesting. It's and when she's presented with this choice later on, it's like, okay, because initially Q's like, oh well, if she's a hybrid, because they're not really sure if she's only half Q or like full Q, and if she's a half Q, like the Q continuum want her assassinated. Like that's like Q might have to kill her. And he's actually went back in that, but then he's like, no, look, we'll give her a choice, right? Picard, you've made your speeches, I've listened somewhat. Here's the choice. You can either stay here with people, live the human life that you want, but you're not allowed to use your powers. And we can't just take them away. There's not like a process to remove them. You just have to not use them. You have to choose never to use them.
Which is interesting, because you would think being Q, they could affect the Q, right? And take her powers away. But either two options. One, Q can't affect other Q. Or two, they just don't, because this is like, this is the challenge.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. So they could in theory, but they're lying and saying, no, we can't do that.
Yeah.
Which which is fine.
I don't know which one the answer is, but I don't think it matters. Either way works.
Yeah. But so she's presented this choice, and at first she says, yeah, I'll do this. And the backdrop of the episode, like where they are and like what the ship's doing throughout the episode, is they're helping with this planet that's had, the climate change has been so bad that they need all this help, and they're having trouble breathing. We eventually see like the president of this world is like, coughing.
A little inhaler, basically.
Yeah. And one of the things we learn is that one of the things they've done to try and help the pollution and stuff is that they've put devices to like sort of help cleanse this, like an ion shield, but it's like a plot device because it's like why they can't beam down to the planet. Like they have to take shuttles down because this tech stops the beaming.
It doesn't make the planet any better. It just stops it getting any worse.
Yeah.
And I actually think this subplot I think could have been slightly better integrated. And I think this is where you could have had her realization of her powers. Maybe when she's being selfish, because she's being selfish, doing something for herself with her powers, that's when there's a direct result that affects this. It starts playing with that a little bit when she has to run the tests with the tricorders for Crusher, but it doesn't. There's no real consequences to that. But I think if there was an action with consequences because she, cut the corners and did it the Q way, I think that would have been the realization that might have helped.
Yeah, maybe. Because what she does at the end is like super big. Like she fixes an entire planet's atmosphere and like just like that. Like, oh, you're just perfect again.
And this is the other standout moment where it is treated with some reverence, where it does cut, and she's got she's crying a little bit because she knows what she's done. And she's got damned herself in doing this.
I also love to realize it because obviously Picard was there when all these like options were being presented to her, and he was there when she made the choice. And they come out, they hear this is going on, and like there's about to be a disaster on the planet because of all the problems, and they see the planet just change from this red sky to just like it looks like Earth basically when it's finished. And Picard just turns and looks at her. He knows it's her. Like she's just saved this world, and it's like this is how much of it. And as much as this is like I'd say a good episode, this maybe doesn't reach the heights that maybe it could have. It is notably better than I'd say the majority of the godlike being episodes of the original series, because this moment it felt like a big deal. It felt like she just became something.
Yeah, there's not a lot left of the episode after this, but this moment there is a lot of weight to it where they all just stand there and just contemplate it. There's not a lot of words exchanged after this.
Yeah,
because this is it. That's just that moment just sits there.
And yeah, you get the impression she is like she'll maybe like learn some of the Q continuum ways, but she probably is going to be more helpful after this. And there's some stuff here that like the idea that like her parents were assassinated by the Q continuum for leaving basically.
Yeah, and it implies that they were offered the same choice she was, and they couldn't resist using their powers either, and that's what they got killed for, as opposed to just leaving. It was the leaving and still using the powers.
Do you know what detail I loved about this actually? It's not so much about how they were killed, like or how the fact that the Q couple were killed. It's that they were killed by a tornado, right? And one of the little details I loved here is that Picard pointed out that that's actually suspicious because Earth now has like tech that like sort of like will stop tornadoes and things from happening. Like I don't remember what he called it, but he said there was something like set up around
like a weather system. Yeah,
something to like stop disastrous weather from like hitting places.
Which, of course, Trek has that, but I don't remember ever hearing about it before.
Yeah, but I love the idea that like something that would in the real world be not suspicious at all. A tornado hit, killed like a family in a house is suspicious here.
Like in the Midwest or something where it's like, yeah, of course there's tornadoes.
But like in this context, when you have a system that should have detected this and it appeared out of nowhere, and B, you have this being that could just go snap and make a tornado, that's very suspicious. And also, I think the science says that it was like 5 times more powerful than the size should have indicated.
Yeah,
so I was like, oh, okay, so this was a murder weapon tornado.
Which is kind of cool when you think about
it. So I'm imagining like, how in the Truman Show where a little bit of rain follows him, I'm imagining like a little tornado that just hits the one place.
Yeah, pretty much.
So that's pretty cool. So I love that little detail. I think and a lot of stuff early on, like she uses like sort of revealing stuff, but before it tells you she's a Q necessarily, where she's talking to Riker when he introduces her to her quarters, and they talk about her having dogs, and then when he leaves, some dogs appear, and she's like, "Oh no, you guys can't be here," and she makes them all disappear again. It's like, okay, that was interesting. But then the next moment is when she's in the shuttle area, and they're loading up one of the shuttles to go down to the planet, and there's just a container in a walkway that is falling on Riker's head from above, and she just sort of goes whoosh and makes it fly to the side so it won't hit him.
Yeah. And it turns out later that was Q that did that. Is just testing to see how in control her powers are.
And then he does the big test, which is he overloads the engine and the warp drive, and it's going to like blow, and like they're all evacuating the engine area, and she just like turns and like absorbs the blast and makes it go back in and like fixes the engine. And this is because they witnessed this, and this is like, but this is also like, oh, she's really this is not just a little bit of telekinesis, like she is like super powerful here.
And I love that when Q shows up, it's like, yeah, that was me, I was testing it, and they're like, and what if she didn't manage to do it? She just dances around. It's like, don't worry about it. She did.
No, the exact line, because I like this too. The exact line was, so what happens if she didn't stop the warp drive from overloading? Then I would have known she wasn't a Q.
Yeah.
Oh, it's so deadpan. I love it. Like so much of this episode is actually really enjoyable to watch. There's a lot of good stuff early on revealing who she is. I like that she is the main character. I like that there is like some weight to like what she's become and the choices she's made at the end, and it's a little bit bittersweet because she's kind of given up the normal life she wanted up until this point. But yeah, like, you know, the only real kind of thing with it is that there's probably some higher heights that it could have reached with a few things had it done a couple of things, you know. That's basically the only thing that I would say against it. You know, and you know the fact that this planet, there's like a really on the nose line. Clearly, people were thinking about climate change around this time because someone said, like, you know, why didn't they just like regulate the things that were causing the pollution in the first place? It's like, yeah, that's what they should have done. And it's like, oh, just a very, very direct bit of messaging there for the real world. Still very relevant, might I add.
It's a real shame that 30 odd years later that you could have done that exact same line and no one would have blinked an eye. Yeah,
although I feel like if they did this now, there'd be a lot of people on the internet saying it was a woke line. It's too too political.
Yeah.
There was a great headline. I think it was like a Fox News article.
I saw it this week.
Yeah, it was Star Trek's going boldly where it's never went before to like woke politics, and you know people were sharing it with that meme. You tell me you've never seen Star Trek without saying you've never seen Star Trek.
Yeah,
that's what that is. Star Trek. Do you not think Star Trek was political as shit in the 60s? Like, it was so
let
political.
alone in the 90s.
Oh, jeez.
Like, it's baked into what it has always been. And if you didn't see that, you have some... You need to reevaluate how you actually watch media.
You either are too dumb to get simple things that it's telling you, or you're somehow willfully able to brainwash yourself into ignoring it and just like reading what you want from it, whatever it may be.
It's a weird confirmation bias, isn't it?
Yeah,
of like, you know, they know what they want to see in it, so they see it as, I assume, like just military sci-fi, even though that is barely what it is.
Yeah. I mean, let's keep in mind, Star Trek. This idyllic future version of Star Trek has done away with currency. No one makes money. Like, so much of what the modern world depends on has been done away with.
Yeah, it's borderline an alien society to us.
Yeah. So I don't know. This is really funny to me, but yeah, that's just proof of, like, there was really, like, there's always political stuff in Star Trek, but that was like a really on the nose moment where I really felt like, oh, this is clearly relevant. Like, they were talking about this in the media maybe a lot this few months when they were writing this episode, because they really put that in there.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah.
It's probably part of that big recycling push that started around then.
Oh yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. Obviously, you were, I think, not quite born yet. I was like a toddler, so like not exactly our era for remembering things.
I am aware of the public perception still, right?
Sure.
You know, the recycling campaigns that kind of kicked off around late 80s, early 90s.
One of my favorite little moments of this is Picard's talking to Q in private, which is funny because it's right. Actually, two favorite moments. Actually, this just reminded me of another favorite moment. Is the little wink he gives Crusher Q, just when he's because he shows up at the first in the red, you know, in the meeting room, right, the observation deck, and just starts talking to them, and just they're talking about making like Q babies or something, and he just like looks at Crusher and winks at her, and it made me laugh because it was so out of nowhere, like he's trying to flirt with her just suddenly. But when he goes off to Picard, he's like, oh, let's go speak on our own. All these like other voices are getting in my way, and they go off to Picard's room, there's a little moment where eventually Picard accepts that like the only person who can give her advice is Q, and accepts that, you know, for her sake, to make this go smoothly, they have to be, we have to appear. And Q just puts his arm around Picard, pulls him in, and goes, "Friends."
I think it's pals.
Pals, that was it. And then Picard just like mutters, "Civil."
Yeah. I'm convinced Patrick Stewart has a lot of fun with these episodes.
Oh, for sure. Him like being miserable with Q, and like Q, like Delancey is so good at this character, and just like
they both look like they're just having a lot of fun playing these roles.
But no, I really laughed at that. Him putting his arm around him and pulling him in, and just having this shine grin on his face.
I don't remember if it actually did, but in my head, the camera zooms in a little bit, like as he puts the arm around, it zooms in before he says "pals."
I don't think it did.
I don't think it does, but the comedic moment in my head, in my memory, has played it like that, and I like it that way, so I'm not going to change it.
Basically, you're imagining it being edited like The Office.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah, and that's the thing. They go to speak to her the first time she meets Q, and he immediately just goes up and grabs her arm and starts like looking at her eyes and starts like prodding at her,
like grabbing her face and like examining.
Yeah, and actually, so one of the big moments of the episode is that when Q tries to force her to like go somewhere, she throws Q back with her powers, and it's like, oh, she can take him on.
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting.
And then Q's like, no, I was just testing it to see how she'd react.
Yeah, of course you work.
Yeah, of course.
I love the little moment there. Picard's like, "Oh, you might be useful. Do you want a position in the crew so that every time Q comes up, you can just banish him away? I'll pay you out my personal salary."
Yes, the personal salary that he definitely doesn't get paid because they have no currency.
Yeah, they have no currency. Yeah, no need for it. But he'll find a way to make it worth their while. I don't know what it is. Maybe he'll. What does she like? Does she like Shakespearean style actors doing soliloquies? He'll do one for her every night as payment.
Yeah,
barter with his skills. Yeah. So yeah, it was. I think I enjoyed watching this. It never felt slow, and I was never thinking that it was. If anything, I felt it really ended quite quickly. I could have used another minute to like decompress after the ending.
I could as well, but I also really liked at the same time that it just stayed on that kind of final couple of beats, and just it felt like it was just like, well, we're just going to leave it there with that weight of those moments. I
also like that she says to Q, we're not going straight to the continuum. I'm going to go speak to my adopted parents and like tell them where I'm going, and say some goodbyes for now, kind of thing. Because and Q can't say shit because she's a Q. She can take him on. She can't force it.
Yeah.
So,
and he knows that now.
Yeah. So that's interesting.
I think my biggest complaint is that middle section where she goes a little bit power mad and then has a very sudden realization to come back down to earth, which didn't feel like it was a dramatic enough moment to kind of undo that power trip.
Could have done with a bit more weight. Maybe you could just rejig the episode a little bit, or arguably you could make it a two-parter and make the journey a bit more spread out to allow for the weight of there. But
yeah, I think it is just that, like, there's that 5-10 minute section there that maybe needed another pass. But other than that, I think it's a very good episode.
But as we've been talking about it, like, other than a couple of things that it maybe could have had a bit more of or done a little bit better, like, everything we've said has been pretty positive, and it's been full of little fun moments. So certainly not a bad time, and certainly not anything that I would complain about. So
no, definitely.
Yeah, there you go. That's True Q. That is the episode. So what's coming up next time, you might be asking, on Star Trek The Next Generation? We have an episode.
Uh-oh.
Well, it may not be bad. The rating looks fine, but the title, I think, is going to make you worry.
Uh-oh.
The episode's called Rascals.
It's a kids episode, isn't it?
And the image does seem to have multiple children at it. Here's the description on IMDb. An emergency beam out renders 4 crewmen down to childhood shortly. Wait, what? Oh, also, okay, I understand it now. I thought we were trying to say that we went somewhere. Like, no. An emergency beam out renders 4 crewmen down to childhood shortly before renegade Ferengi take over the Enterprise and offload the adults. So 4 of the crew turn into kids. That's what it's saying.
Oh, I hate this so much.
This might be fun. This is like kid versions of some of the characters having to. In fact, I think one of them's Guinan. I think I see Guinan's hat.
I know that's exactly what this is. This is the kid versions. You'll have Kid Picard trying to and is he still capable of leadership? That's what it'll do.
Is he still bald? Oh,
I hope so.
I don't know. It's crew. It's only 4 though, so maybe it won't be Picard.
No, if one's gone, it'll be the main
Riker. I think one's Ensign Ro. I think I see Ensign Ro's like head. She was like a banana thing.
Yeah.
I don't know who the 4th one is. Oh, from a glance.
God damn it! I'm gonna hate this so much.
Oh, it's definitely Ensign Ro. It's definitely Ensign Ro.
Well, I'm glad that Ensign Ro's still around. That'll be.
Wait, why is Guinan going in the transport?
Reasons. Let's wait and see.
I don't know.
Stop judging it.
I don't know. It was the way it described it. I'm second guessing some of it. Whatever. Maybe there's an odd reason why Guinan has to go somewhere. I don't know. Yeah. This says it could be a lot of fun. I'm not gonna lie.
I am.
If these kids do halfway good impressions of the actors,
that's what I'm worried about. It won't be.
Chef's kiss. Oh, I've got high hopes. Rascals is next episode. Looking forward to it. So much hope here. All right. There you go. That is the Star Trek Next Generation discussion. Of course, you can check out all the old episodes that we did of the original series and all of the Next Gen up until now, and of course check out the Modern Trek reviews that I do with Tara now. Strange New Worlds has begun. We're recording these ahead a little bit, so I'm sure by the time this comes out we'll have done like 5 of those, but we've done 2 at the time of recording. So go check out that if you're interested. And other shows like Babylon 5 and Twilight Zone and other sci-fi stuff you can check out on the channel. But that is us. You can support all the content by going to patreon.com/MailFuzzTV, and you can give us as little as $1 per month and help keep all the content coming. But otherwise, that is us. So thank you once again for watching or listening. We always appreciate it. Keep watching Star Trek, and somewhere out there, that little shill, Wesley Crusher, is in complete control.